Hello, I'm Nadia Jani and you're watching A News. Here are your top stories. World leaders gather in Egypt to formally sign Trump's Gaza peace plan. All remaining living Israeli hostages are released in first phase of ceasefire deal. And the UK will host international summit on Gaza's reconstruction. First, history has been made as hostages and prisoners were released under the first phase of the ceasefire deal. US President Donald Trump gave a speech at the Knesset before making his way to Egypt to meet with world leaders to sign the Gaza ceasefire deal. Trump and Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi posed with other world leaders for a family photo ahead of the Gaza Peace Summit held in Sharm el-Sheikh. Later in the day, mediators from Egypt, Qatar and Turkey joined President Trump in signing the Gaza ceasefire deal, marking a key step toward restoring stability in the region. The international summit gathered more than 20 world leaders.
This is an incredible day for the world, let alone the Middle East. So I just wanted to thank the media. They really treated it with respect. I wish you could be like that on other things, but that's perhaps too much to ask for. But on this, tremendous, everybody feels the same, just tremendous respect, and we appreciate it very much.
However, not everyone was there. Iran had declined Egypt's invitation to participate in the Sharm el-Sheikh summit on Gaza ceasefire between Hamas and Israel, saying it cannot sit at the same table with the politicians who attacked his country. This was in reference to the US airstrikes on Iran last June. Tiraj Sharalilu is in Iran with more.
The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi rejected an official invitation to attend the Sharm el-Sheikh summit in Egypt on the ceasefire in Gaza, saying he cannot sit down with representatives of the countries that attacked Iran and continue to threaten and sanction the Iranians. In a post on X, he expressed gratitude for Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's invitation, but made it clear that neither President Masoud Pezeshkian nor himself would be visiting the meeting. Araghchi was referring to the US airstrikes on Iran's civilian nuclear facilities during Israel's 12-day war in June, as well as the US maximum pressure sanctions targeting the country's economy, energy, and health sectors. However, he reiterated Tehran's firm support for any Palestinian decision that ends the occupation of Gaza. Egyptian President al-Sisi and US President Donald Trump co-chaired the summit in Egypt's Red Sea port city of Sharm el-Sheikh to formalize a ceasefire and lay out reconstruction and governance steps after the two-year war in Gaza. Iran does not recognize Israel and therefore has not accepted the two-state solution of Palestine and Israel, expressing its reservation on the issue at the international forums on the situation in the Palestinian lands. Araghchi also rejected Trump's statement saying Iran can join the Abraham Accords, which include agreements that establish diplomatic normalization between Israel and some Arab states. Tiraj Sharalilu, in Tehran, A News TV.
It's been a day of relief and emotion in Israel. Hostages' family reunions across the country marks the end of a long and painful chapter for many families. Here's more.
Today marks a historic day for Israeli hostages and their families. Under a ceasefire deal brokered with the help of US President Donald Trump, Hamas has freed the last living Israeli hostages from Gaza, signaling what Trump called the arrival of peace in the Holy Land. The Israeli military confirmed it has now received all hostages known to be alive after their transfer from Gaza by the Red Cross. The announcement set off scenes of joy and relief across Israel, with thousands gathering at Tel Aviv's Hostage Square, cheering, hugging and weeping as the news broke. All 20 surviving Israeli hostages have now been handed to the Red Cross, with Hamas also confirming their release. Earlier in the day, Israeli police escorted the first group of freed hostages from Gaza to the Rime military base, where helicopters waited to fly them to hospitals for medical checks and reunions with loved ones. A small crowd carrying Israeli flags gathered outside the base at dawn, waving as the convoys arrived. Among those released were several hostages who were welcomed with loud cheers. They smiled and waved to the crowd, one proudly lifting an Israeli flag. Families described the first phone calls and text messages from their loved ones as moments of disbelief and overwhelming emotion after months of fear and uncertainty. At homes across Israel, reunions were filled with both tears and gratitude as the reality of survival began to sink in. For many, this day marks not only the end of captivity, but the beginning of healing after 2 years of devastating conflict.
A news correspondent, Louis Brown, spoke with IDF spokesperson Nadav Shoshani about the atmosphere in Israel following the release of hostages and whether the Israeli military considers the threat of Hamas over.
Well, first of all, it's a day of absolute joy. Every single one Israeli person returning from the captivity from the hands of those Hamas terrorists is a world of its own. It's a day of joy and jubilee for Israelis. And 20 Israelis returned alive from captivity, 2 years of captivity in the hands of those terrorists in those terror tunnels in Gaza, is a day that Israel is overjoyed about. But in the same time, it is not complete. There are still 28 deceased hostages in Gaza, 28 hostages that were taken and murdered by Hamas and held in Gaza that still need to come back, and it is not complete without them. So at the same time that we are happy and overjoyed about those who return, we remember those who haven't returned yet, and make sure we do not forget them, and it's not over until they are back. Well, this plan is a good plan, but we're just in the beginning of it. There's a long way to go, de-radicalizing, demilitarizing, disarming Hamas, and making sure that the Gaza Strip is a terror-free zone. That is not the reality right now, but this is the beginning of a good process. That's where we are. We remain vigilant. Our responsibility is to always be there. We need to be the one standing between Hamas and Israel if Hamas breaks the agreement. We know who we're dealing with. We see just today, they were supposed to return all hostages. They only returned the live hostages so far. So we know who we're dealing with. This is a terror organization. If we will give them a chance to hurt our civilians, they'll take it. So we have to be there and make sure they don't have any chance to harm our civilians.
Staying on this monumentous moment, Donald Trump hailed his peace plan as a historic dawn of a new Middle East and end of the age of terror and death. Addressing the Knesset, he praised American negotiators and regional partners for achieving what he described as a turning point in relations between Israel and Arab nations. Trump said the agreement would reshape the future of the region and open a new era of cooperation.
As partners in peace, and it's pretty unusual for you to see that, but it happened in this case. This was a very unusual point in time, a brilliant point in time. Generations from now, this will be remembered as the moment that everything began to change, and change very much for the better. Like the USA right now, it will be the golden age of Israel and the golden age of the Middle East.
Despite not being present at the Gaza Peace Summit in Egypt, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the Knesset he vowed to strengthen the Abraham Accords under the leadership of US President Donald Trump.
I look forward to continuing marching with you on the path we paved together with the Abraham Accords. Under your leadership, we can forge new peace treaties with Arab countries in the region and Muslim countries beyond the region. Abraham's children will work together to build a better future, a future that will unite civilization against barbarism, light against darkness, and hope against despair. And my friends, I believe that with President Trump's leadership, this will happen a lot faster than people think.
Now to the Palestinian prisoners' release. A convoy of buses carrying more than 1,900 Palestinian prisoners have been received by their loved ones. This was made possible as part of the Gaza ceasefire deal, which was brokered with the help from US, Qatar, Egypt and Turkey. Crowds lined the streets, waving Palestinian flags, as released prisoners were welcomed with happiness, tears and hugs in the city. They were reunited with their families after 2 years of relentless conflict. Experts warn the released Palestinian prisoners are likely in horrific condition after enduring what has been described as brutal and violent treatment in Israeli jails. Now to the UK. The UK is stepping up its role in Gaza's recovery as it prepares to host an international summit. Our correspondent has more on this story.
Britain is preparing to host an international conference on Gaza's recovery and reconstruction. The three-day meeting, organized by the Foreign Office's Wilton Park Agency, will bring together delegates from the Palestinian Authority, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Germany and Italy. Representatives from the World Bank, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and other development and private sector partners will also take part. The aim is to coordinate international support for rebuilding Gaza after years of conflict. Downing Street says the discussions will focus on reconstructing essential infrastructure, restoring services and supporting the Palestinian Authority's reform program, while stressing there will be no role for Hamas in the process. Prime Minister Keir Starmer visits Egypt on Monday for a multinational summit in Sharm el-Sheikh with a truce in Gaza and lasting peace on the agenda. Starmer has said the goal is to ensure that civilians on both sides can rebuild their lives safely and securely. The UK has also announced that £20 million of existing aid will be directed to water, sanitation and hygiene services in Gaza, delivered through UNICEF, the World Food Programme and the Norwegian Refugee Council. This comes in addition to existing humanitarian support. The UK has already committed £74 million this year to humanitarian assistance for Palestine. Zainab Farizadeh, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Turning to other news now, at a press conference held in Kyiv, the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andrei Sybiha said Ukraine hopes 7 more countries will join the prioritised Ukraine requirements list. Speaking alongside EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas, Sybiha confirmed that 6 countries had already contributed to the initiative and indicated that 7 more are expected to join. He did not specify which countries might participate, although Ukraine's presidential office said last month that the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Germany and Canada had already funded the first 4 prioritised Ukraine requirements list aid packages. Tensions along NATO's eastern flank are rising once again. From the Baltic Sea to the Arctic Circle, the alliance is reinforcing air and ground defences amid a new wave of Russian drone activity and airspace violations.
Russian jets and drones are testing NATO's defences, forcing Europe to rethink how it protects its airspace. Italy has deployed Eurofighter Typhoon jets to Estonia's Amari airbase, replacing F-35s under NATO's Baltic air policing mission. The new detachment strengthens NATO's deterrence over the Baltic, a corridor now under constant radar surveillance. Last month, 3 Russian MiG-31s breached Estonian airspace, a clear reminder that NATO's northern skies remain a front line of strategic tension. Further north, NATO inaugurated its Northern Land Forces Command in Mikkeli, Finland. Sharing grounds with Finland's Army Command, it will plan and coordinate ground operations across Northern Europe. Currently staffed by officers from 10 allied nations, it is expected to grow to 50 personnel in peacetime. Finland's Defence Minister Antti Heikkinen said the new structure will strengthen NATO's defence in the high north and enhance Finland's security in an unpredictable era. The most alarming development this fall has been Russia's drones entering NATO airspace. On the night of September 9th to 10th, over 19 drones launched from Belarus crossed into Poland. This marked NATO's first drone shootdown inside alliance territory since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine began in 2022. Analysts say it was a deliberate test by Moscow to probe NATO's radar coverage, AWACS coordination, refueling logistics, and Patriot missile systems. In response, Poland invoked NATO's Article 4, calling for consultations on security threats. Brussels launched Operation Eastern Watch, deploying additional units to the eastern border. Meanwhile, 10 European defence ministers have backed a new initiative, the Drone Wall, integrating detection, jamming and neutralisation systems into a continent-wide anti-drone network. Originally an emergency measure, it is evolving into a strategic doctrine against hybrid warfare. Public support for increased defence spending is cooling. A mid-September survey shows 67% of Europeans back higher defence budgets, down from 74% in April. Support is highest in Central and Eastern Europe and lowest in Southern Europe. Italy is at 48%, while Poland tops 86%. More than half doubt Europe's ability to withstand a long-term military conflict. Political alignment matters. Centre-right and liberal groups like EPP and Renew show strongest backing, while left-wing and far-right parties remain more sceptical.
Now over to France, who has a new government once again. Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has unveiled his second cabinet in just over a month as President Emmanuel Macron struggles to push through the 2026 budget and end weeks of political deadlock. But with Parliament deeply divided, the new team faces an immediate test.
France's political turbulence has taken a new turn. Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has unveiled his second cabinet in just over a month, as President Emmanuel Macron struggles to pass the 2026 budget and restore stability. The Élysée Palace confirmed the lineup on Sunday, keeping most key ministers despite opposition demands for change. Finance Minister Roland Lescure, a close Macron ally, remains in charge of the economy. Reappointed just a week ago after his last government collapsed within days, Lecornu has pledged a mission-driven administration focused on stability and reform. On X, he wrote, "Only one thing matters: the good of the country." The reshuffle brought few surprises. Laurent Nunez, head of the Paris police, became interior minister, replacing conservative Bruno Retailleau. Catherine Vautrin takes over defence, and Jean-Pierre Farandou of SNCF becomes Labour minister. Analysts say the limited changes show Macron's determination to keep control amid pressure from both left and right. The continuity at the top reflects Macron's main goal, passing a 2026 budget by Wednesday's constitutional deadline before he travels to Egypt for Gaza ceasefire talks. Without approval, France could be forced to run on emergency funding from January. The numbers tell the story of France's economic bind. The deficit is expected to reach 5.4% of GDP this year, well above the EU's 3% limit, while public debt has alarmed markets and pushed up borrowing costs. Lecornu says the deficit must come down next year, but with enough flexibility to win over sceptical lawmakers. Restoring confidence in France's finances remains a top priority, though officials insist it won't come at the cost of the social model. Analysts say the government's survival and Macron's wider reform agenda now depends on this week's crucial vote. Failure could push France deeper into political paralysis, putting the 2026 budget and Europe's second-largest economy at risk.
Staying on this topic and the mounting pressure Sébastien Lecornu is under to produce a budget that many hope will quell the political turmoil that is scaring businesses and investors. Joining me now to unpack this is political analyst Gregory Mathieu. Welcome.
Good evening.
My first question is, now that Lecornu has selected his cabinet, is there some form of light at the end of this tunnel?
Well, a week ago, Mr. Lecornu nominated a cabinet that left 14 hours. At least this cabinet has survived more than 14 hours, but I'm not expecting this cabinet to run the country until the next presidential election. As your reporter indicated, indeed, the most important thing now in France is to get a budget. But analysts are looking at the composition of the government, and indeed there is not much change at the horizon. Macron kept his friend in the government, and in fact this government doesn't really reflect the result of the last elections. So the Socialist Party is now a key element in French politics, despite during the last presidential election the socialist candidate gathered 2.5% of the votes.
So with that in mind, there is now a lot of focus, as you mentioned, on the budget, which I believe is going to be revealed on Wednesday, with a huge debt to obviously try to lower. What can Le Cornu and Emmanuel Macron do in regards to that to make sure everyone is happy with the outcome?
Well, this budget, in fact, will not be any wonderful budget. It is basically the Bayrou budget, the budget that was built by former Prime Minister François Bayrou, that is retainable. And the most important and crucial point now to manage to keep the socialists inside what is called the platform of stability is to tackle the reform pension system. The Socialist Party are now having the keys to make this government over, but there are already two motions for censorship, Marine Le Pen Party and LFI, Jean-Luc Mélenchon Party, and the Green Party also on Wednesday deposited a motion for censorship. So this government could fall possibly on Wednesday, and all is on the shoulder of the socialist member of parliament. There are 69, and if 25 of them would vote for censorship, this government is out.
There's a lot to play for in that sense. So my last question would be, Macron has received a lot of criticism over this, with some wanting him to resign. What is his best next steps for his political career?
Well, I wouldn't like to be impolite, but his political career is reaching an end because he cannot run for next president. He has been doing it, it's his second mandate. Even his first prime minister called for his resignation. So I think that now, unfortunately or fortunately, I'm not taking side, there is a kind of a boulevard for Marine Le Pen party for the next presidential election, because the other parties seems to be very divided and fragmented indeed.
Well, thank you so much for your insights and for joining me today. Thank you, Mr. Mathieu.
You're welcome.
Now, the Dutch government has taken control of a Chinese-owned computer chip maker, citing security concerns. Our correspondent has more from the Netherlands.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, where a surprise announcement by the Dutch government sends shockwaves through global tech and trade circles. The Ministry of Economic Affairs seized control of Nexperia, a semiconductor company owned by Chinese investors. The Hague calls the takeover an exceptional national security measure, citing fears that advanced chip technology could be transferred abroad. Nexperia is one of Europe's most important semiconductor firms, best known for producing chips used in smartphones, EVs, and industrial sensors. The Dutch government says the company's Chinese ownership through Wingtech Technology, which is partially owned by the Chinese government, poses unacceptable security risks. Officials allege potential technology leakage toward Beijing, and the decision follows months of quiet pressure from both the U.S. and the European Commission to tighten controls on Chinese investments in sensitive sectors. According to a statement from the Dutch government, the move is solely intended to prevent governance shortcomings at Nexperia and is not directed at other companies, the sector, or other countries. But that framing is unlikely to appease Beijing. China's embassy in The Hague already condemned the move as politically motivated expropriation. Analysts see this as a watershed moment, not just for the Netherlands, but for Europe's broader industrial policy. For decades, the Dutch prided themselves on being one of the EU's most open economies. However, with the U.S. imposing strict export controls on advanced chip-making gear, particularly from Dutch giant ASML, the Netherlands is now a frontline player in the West's semiconductor containment strategy against China. But critics warn this could trigger economic retaliation. China could restrict access to critical rare earth minerals vital for EV batteries and green tech. Already, European car makers and electronics manufacturers are bracing for possible supply disruptions. Globally, this move reinforces the bifurcation of tech ecosystems, one led by the U.S. and allies, the other by China. It also emboldens other Western governments to follow suit. Germany, France, even the UK are reassessing Chinese holdings in their semiconductor supply chains. But for multinational firms, it raises uncomfortable questions. Can they still operate in China and remain part of Western security networks? Will global supply chains fragment even further? The answers could redefine how and where the world's most critical technology is made. On Tuesday, the Dutch parliament is expected to debate whether to expand national security screening to other strategic industries, a decision that could set the tone for Europe's next chapter in the global chip war. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma reporting from the Netherlands.
The final Nobel Prize of 2025 in Economic Sciences has been awarded to Joel Mokyr, Philippe Aghion and Peter Howitt for their work on innovation, growth and creative destruction. Their research deepened understanding of how technologies like e-commerce and streaming disrupt older industries while improving human welfare. The Nobel Committee said their work shows that growth depends on supporting innovation, a challenge especially relevant as Europe lags behind the US and China in digital development.
During almost all
Turning to the region now, tensions are running high between Afghanistan and Pakistan as the deadliest border clashes in years erupt. Both sides report heavy casualties and blame each other for the violence. Pakistan says 23 of its soldiers have died, while the Afghanistan reports 9 fighters killed. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has more from Kabul.
Dozens of fighters were killed overnight in fierce clashes between Afghan and Pakistani forces. The fighting marks the most serious confrontation since the Taliban's return to power in 2021 and follows weeks of growing tension. Islamabad accuses Kabul of sheltering militants behind a surge in attacks inside Pakistan, an allegation Kabul denies. Each side claims to have inflicted much heavier losses on the other, though none of the figures have been independently verified. The clashes came after reported Pakistani airstrikes targeting areas in Kabul and eastern Afghanistan, which Afghan officials say prompted retaliatory fire across the border. By Sunday, officials on both sides said that fighting had eased after mediation by Qatar and Saudi Arabia, though the situation remains fragile. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump says he's ready to step in to help resolve the crisis, expressing confidence in his ability to broker peace between the two countries. International and regional powers are calling for calm, but tonight the fragile peace along one of the world's most volatile borders remains under severe strain. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Staying on the subject of the conflict, I'm now joined by Shiraz Mahmood Khan. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
My first question is, there has been a long-standing feud between the Taliban and Pakistan. What is the real cause behind the attacks?
Well, since Taliban has taken over back in 2021, we've been witnessing, Pakistan has been witnessing a lot of, cross-border violence, particularly on Torkham, which is a part of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, to the tribal areas of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province of Pakistan, and Chaman, which is Balochistan. So there were a lot of terrorisms terrorism from across the border were being faced by the people of Pakistan, particularly the armed forces of Pakistan. So there were a lot of negotiations, there were a lot of dialogue, which went through both of the governments. The foreign minister visited Kabul and a lot of other delegations, and there were bilateral talks. And if you recall Doha Agreement, it was said that the Afghan soil should not be used in any kind of terrorist activities. And besides a lot of talk on that subject, it has been witnessed that there have been a lot of terrorist attacks from across the border, which were financed, which were actually done by Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan mainly, and helped by India, and that has Pakistani government has even given the witness to that. So this has been and recently 11 just 3-4 days back, 11.
Mr. Khan, sorry, I need to just interrupt you very briefly. We don't have a lot of time, but I just wanted to ask you another quick question in regards to what you've just revealed just now. But wasn't this also due to the airstrike in Kabul as well?
Well, on the airstrike in Kabul is related to the Pakistan has been telling them that your soil is being used for the terrorist activities in Pakistan, and this terrorism has been witnessed by Pakistan for decades. Pakistan has lost around 85,000 personnel in this terrorism since 2001, 9,000 security personnel, economic loss of $150 billion US.
But Mr. Khan, wasn't that because
still Pakistan was trying to warn them that it should not be used? Well, Pakistan has defended its territory, and in Kabul, not in Kabul, but in their territory, there were some places and hideouts of the militants, and that had been targeted by Pakistan.
And is that because of the retaliation, Taliban's retaliation to those?
This comes in Taliban's retaliation because it was first Taliban who attacked, which is unprecedented. It has never happened before. It has been unprecedented, since we know Afghanistan, but this is for the first time that they have attacked the very territory of Pakistan, and they had to retaliate. And Pakistan, under the international law, Pakistan keeps the right to rebuttal. To retaliate.
Of course.
And make sure that the territorial integrity is sovereign.
And can you just explain very briefly the difference between, as some of our viewers may not be aware, of the Afghanistan Taliban and the Pakistan Taliban, because these are two very separate entities.
Well, yeah, after there's a Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, which operates in Afghan soil against Pakistan. Their target is to destabilize Pakistan's economy, Pakistan's sovereignty, Pakistan, everything. So we have been facing that, and there are a lot of groups of Taliban in Afghanistan. But right now, what we are witnessing is Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, which has been using Afghan soil against Pakistan, and a lot of casualties recently took place. 11 people died a week back, military personnel, and
Mr. Khan, I just need to interrupt there just to say that, the Taliban actually deny that about Afghan soil there with what you just mentioned. But I completely understand where you're coming from. I just want to ask you one very quick final question. Trump spoke briefly about what was happening in Afghanistan and Pakistan conflict. Do you think he could calm down tensions between the two nations?
Well, Trump's today's statement, I was just reading it somewhere. He says that, well, I have stopped a lot of conflicts. So he thinks that he's a big time peacemaker. Well, he can obviously do it because it is not good for the region. Pakistan is the biggest military might in the region. Recently they went through a war with India as well. So the world has witnessed. So with the biggest military might, you cannot really, this thing should not really go on for a longer period of time. So Qatar is obviously doing its own role, and Saudi Arabia, and obviously if Trump comes in, things can get settled.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me and for your insights, Mr. Khan. Thank you.
My pleasure.
The third trilateral meeting of the Speakers of Parliament of Azerbaijan, Pakistan and Turkey has taken place in Islamabad. The speakers emphasised the importance of strengthening brotherly ties and parliamentary cooperation. The Speaker of the National Assembly of Pakistan described the situation in Palestine as genocide and called for international accountability. Participants also discussed expanding trilateral parliamentary cooperation and proposed the creation of a Young Parliamentarians Forum. The meeting continued with panel discussions throughout the day. Tensions in Georgia continue to draw international attention after the OSCE voiced concern over post-election unrest. The Speaker of Parliament has accused Brussels of fueling instability. Here's our correspondent with the latest.
Amid mounting political tensions in Georgia, the international community is expressing alarm over the country's deepening unrest following local elections earlier this month. The OSCE Parliamentary Assembly's Special Representative for South Caucasus, Luis Graca, said that he was deeply concerned about the increasing tensions and violence that erupted during and after the October 4th local elections. He urged Georgian authorities to uphold democratic standards, protect the right to peaceful assembly, and ensure that civil society can operate freely. But the rhetoric inside Georgia is becoming more confrontational. In a sharply worded post, Parliament Speaker Shalom Paplashvili accused Brussels of being behind what he called street wars in Tbilisi. Echoing Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's claim that the EU's peace project is turning into a war project, Paplashvili suggested that European influence is fueling unrest rather than promoting stability. These statements reflect a broader trend, the growing assertiveness of conservative forces across parts of Europe, from Budapest to Tbilisi, who portray Brussels as detached from traditional values and national sovereignty. Analysts say Georgia, in this sense, is finding ideological allies among Europe's nationalist governments, even as its relationship with the bloc's liberal democratic core becomes increasingly strained. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Kazakhstan is making significant strides in expanding its green energy collaboration with the European Union. Fariza Kalamazana is in Almaty with more.
Kazakhstan is strengthening its partnership with the European Union in green energy. During the Global Gateway Forum in Brussels, the Kazakh delegation signed key memorandums with the European Investment Bank and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. These agreements opened the door to major investments in renewable energy, power grid modernization, and large-scale hydropower projects, including the Kambarata HPP-1. At the forum, Kazakhstan's Minister of Energy, Erlan Akkenjenov, met with European leaders and financial institutions alongside his counterparts from Central Asia. And following these talks, the European Union announced a $2.4 billion investment package for Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan to support the Kambarata-1 hydroelectric project. Of that, $1 billion is allocated to Kyrgyzstan, where the 1860 megawatts plant will be built on the Naryn River. The project was approved earlier this year by Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. And according to the Bishkek Agreement, Kyrgyzstan holds a 34% stake, while Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan each hold 33%. Upon completion, full ownership of the dam and power station will transfer to Kyrgyzstan. Also, President Sadr Japarov estimates the total cost between $5 and $6 billion. Experts say construction may take at least 15 years. This initiative is a key element of the European Union's wider global gateway strategy, which focuses on deepening cooperation with Central Asian countries across transport, critical minerals, energy, water resources, and digital infrastructure. The strategy also reflects the European Union's response to changing geopolitical realities following the war in Ukraine and the increasing influence of China in the region. This year, following the summit, Central Asian countries and the European Union agreed on a joint investment package totaling 12 billion euros to support key sectors including transport, critical minerals, energy, climate and water management. Fariza Kalimurzana, A News, Almaty.
Over $200 million is being invested in constructing a multi-modal logistics hub in Tashkent. The project aims to expand Uzbekistan's transit potential and strengthen its role as a trade link between Central Asia, the Middle East and Europe. Sevil Rajapova reports from Tashkent.
DP World, one of the world's largest logistics companies, has signed an agreement with Tashkent Invest to build a new multi-modal logistics terminal in the capital. The total investment will reach $288 million. The complex will occupy around 82 hectares within the Yangia-Vlod Special Industrial Zone in the Gehayot district. The project will include a dry port with rail connections for container and covered cargo, custom clearance zones, vehicle storage areas, parking for heavy trucks, Class A warehouses and transshipment terminals. DP World Tashkent, a joint venture in which DP World holds 85% and Tashkent Invest 15%, will implement the project. The first phase will feature a rail terminal capable of handling 150,000 standard shipping containers per year and warehouse facilities covering 63,000 square meters. Completion is expected between late 2026 and early 2027. The new terminal is expected to create hundreds of skilled jobs and improve cargo handling efficiency, reducing logistics costs and delivery times. Uzbekistan says that such projects align with the country's strategy to diversify trade routes and develop the country into a regional transport hub. It is Sevil Rajapova reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Now, Azerbaijan is hosting the 67th Annual General Assembly in the International Association of Judges, bringing together legal experts from over 70 countries. Nurey Mustafa reports from the venue.
Reporting from Baku, where the Azerbaijani capital is this week at the very heart of the international legal community. From the 11th to the 17th of October 2025, Baku is hosting the 67th Annual General Assembly of the International Association of Judges. The association, established back in 1953, brings together judicial organizations from 93 countries with one clear purpose: to safeguard the independence of judges and promote the rule of law across the world.
Today, the judiciary worldwide stands at historic crossroads, facing new and complex challenges. Our mission must adapt to changing realities, yet the values we defend remain timeless. As the world evolves faster than ever before, we must ensure that justice continues to preserve its true meaning in this new era.
This year, nearly 300 participants from 71 nations have gathered here, including judges, legal experts, and representatives from international organizations. Over the coming days, they'll be discussing global justice, judicial reforms, and the sharing best practice from their own legal systems. As the host nation, Azerbaijan is also showcasing its judicial and legal framework to the international community.
This year's AI meeting is shadowed with many problems judiciary are facing all over the world. The scenarios which we could imagine only in the literature and in the countries of low democracy history are happening before our eyes in states which were role model for many judiciaries in the world. The scenarios are rather simple and in many aspects the same.
One of the key highlights of the assembly will be the election of the association's next president, right here in Baku. The decision to hold this year's gathering in Azerbaijan was made last year in Cape Town, South Africa, following a secret ballot among member countries. And now that decision has turned Baku into a global meeting point for justice and the rule of law. Nuray Mustafa reporting from Baku with cameraman Zohrab Shirinov for A News TV.
That's all we have for you for now. From all of us in the studio, thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.